Attention bowlers, we are going to get started from Lakeside Lanes at Manchester, New Hampshire. This is the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour. My name is Steve Kelly, and I will be your host and guide during this Class B North match between today's challengers, Rob Brown versus Eric Hallee Sr. Good as always to have you along with us. Originally live streamed on Friday, February 23rd, 2024. And available for rewatching anytime upon the conclusion of this match. If you're new to the ACST or Candlepin bowling in general, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to you and hope you enjoy this match and Candlepin bowling as a whole. If you are a returning bowler, welcome back. Your continued viewership is greatly appreciated as Rob Brown starts out on lane 23 here at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. Rob Brown is from Riverwalk Lanes in Amesbury, Massachusetts. He is our away bowler today, challenging Eric Hallee Sr. here in Manchester, New Hampshire, as Rob Brown nearly gets a spare after 2 balls. Second ball leaving all but the 7-pin. Rob Brown will open up this 5-game series with a 9-box. Rob Brown and Eric Hallee Sr. will bowl 5 games of Candlepin bowling, in which points will be awarded to the victor of each string, as well as additional points awarded to the bowler who takes total out of 14 available points. Rob Brown's opening ball takes out all but the 2-pin on the deck. Excuse me, the 4-pin, not the 2-pin. Rob Brown for a spare on lane 23 at Lakeside Lanes. He narrowly misses it, slightly off to the right. Rob Brown now for a 10-box. It'll be his second 9-box in a row for 18 after 2. Here at Lakeside Lanes. Lakeside Lanes is located right off of exit 1 on 101 in Manchester, New Hampshire. I like to think of it like as if you are going to UNH from 293 but decide to go bowling instead and veer off the first exit you see on Route 101 in New Hampshire. Rob Brown hunting for a spare and can't quite find one. It's quite elusive. The 1, the 3, the 5, the 9, the 10 pins on the deck. For a 10-box, that's a 5-box for Rob, a frustrating 5-box. 23 after 3 for Rob Brown. The first right off the Massabesic traffic circle after taking exit 1 on 101 and adjacent to Massabesic Lake. Lakeside Lanes is a humble 24-lane house comprised of all wood lanes and approaches. Lakeside Lanes opened up on November 27th, 1959, and is nearly the same age as Leda Lanes in Nashua, New Hampshire, at roughly 64 years of age. According to Lakeside Lanes' website, quote, rigid specifications of construction required that they be leveled to width of 40 out of a thousandth of an inch, so precise that setting the wood alone required more than a month's time. This Rob Brown will take an 8-box for 31 after 4. Lakeside Lanes has a soundproofing system in which 85% of all sound is absorbed. The current owner of Lakeside Lanes is Tim Lipke, his son Shane Lipke, and as well as a cast of other insanely helpful staff such as Bobby Greco do an amazing job at keeping this place looking and feeling great. Tons of leagues, really fun and unique pools for things such as 4 strikes in a row, 50 over your average, and the orange pin pool, in which if the head pin is an orange pin and you get a strike or a spare, you get entered in for a raffle, as Rob Brown will conclude his 5th box in the first half of the first game for 41 after 5 with that 10-box. And we will now be saying hello to Eric Hallee Sr., our home bowler at Lakeside Lanes, who is defending against Rob Brown today. Eric Hallee Sr. has a seasonal record of 77 and 77 with 11 matches bowled so far. His season average is 108.45, the 19th in B class, with an average variance of 105.6 to 119.8. Eric Hallee Sr.'s opening ball collides with the head pin, leaving the 2, the 4, and the 10 pins on the deck. The 4 pin is an orange pin. Eric Hallee Sr. leads B North Division 4. He is a division leader. He is ahead of Casey McCool, David LaRoche, and is trailing Faye Sawyer. as of February 21st. Stats provided by Micah Imparato. His high single is 143. His high series for this season is 615. And Eric Hallee will conclude his first box with a 9 after 1, tying Rob Brown's 9 after 1. Eric Hallee Sr. has 32 strikes, 97 spares, and 126 tens as of February 21st. His perfect box percentage is 51, with 5,965 seasonal total pins as of February 21st, as Eric Hallee Sr. punches out the right side half Worcester. The 3 and the 9 pins get taken to the hospital on lane 23 at Lakeside Lanes. Eric Hallee Sr. looking to redeem himself with a spare, and look at that spare by Eric Hallee Sr. A beautiful ball, perfectly executed, just hit lightly enough on the invisible 1-3 pocket, colliding with the head pin and taking out everything else for a spare. That's the first mark of the game. Eric Hallee Sr. is on the board with an open spare, an open 19 after 2 in the second box. Potential for an early lead here for Eric Hallee Sr. Hallee Sr. on a fill, just narrowly missing the head pin, but taking a couple extra generous pins for a 5 fill on that spare. That puts him at 24 after 2. Hallee Sr. now with a rather difficult potential spare here. And will he get it? He will not necessarily get the head pin there, but takes a few more for the road. Currently looking at a 7, 8, 9, or 10 for Eric Hallee Sr. Senior will take an 8 box for 32 after 3 for Mr. Eric Hallee Sr. He has only bowled 16 out of 55 games under 100 this season. He has yet to throw a match without a total of 500 or higher. He has 1 game over 600 under his belt. He has 4 games over 550 under his belt. Eric missing the head pin and only taking out the 2 pin. Wow. Gotta tell you, that is often rarer than a strike to take out only one of the middle 3 pins. So Eric now basically has to throw the equivalent of a strike ball to get anything, but he will instead complete the half Worcester. The first ball was a quarter Worcester. This second ball completes the half Worcester with the 2 and the 8 pins out. Now Eric is looking at a 2 through 10 box, potentially, and he will settle for an 8 box in the 4th for 40 after 4. Eric Hallee Sr. bowled his high single twice in Week 1 and in Week 7 versus Dominic Palladino, and then again versus Steve Kelly, respectively. That high single was 143. Most recently, Hallee Sr. in Week 10 bowled Joe Rochelot at Academy Lanes. He only took 2 points, while Joe took 12. He had a 507 series, his lowest since Week 5. He averaged 107.9 for that match, with 2 strikes, 7 spares, and 16 tens. 3 out of 5 games were under 100, so Eric had a bit of a rough match for sure against Joe Rochelot in Week 10. Week 11, Eric Hallee bowled a lot better against Tony LeVake, and that was bowled before Week 10, but he took 11 points to Tony's 3 with a 567 series, averaging 109.1. 6 strikes, 11 spares, and 13 tens. Second game was an 87, followed by a 140 third game, so Eric has a good track record of bouncing back. So anyways, Eric took a 9 box in the 5th. That is 49 after 5 for Eric Hallee Sr. Compare that to Rob Brown's 41 after 5. Eric with an early mark, putting him ahead. But now Rob Brown looking to respond on lane 24 for the second half of the first game here at the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour, this Friday evening match at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. My name is Steve Kelly. Happy to have you along if you're just tuning in. And if you have been tuning in, thanks for continuing to watch this awesome Friday night ACST Class B North action. So Rob Brown will take 9 box. Rob Brown struggling to get some marks. He's at 50 after 6 right now. So let's talk about Mr. Brown. Rob Brown's seasonal record is 77 and 105. His season average is 103.71, 28th in B class. Average variance anywhere between 100.9 and 105.6. He is 3rd in B North Division 1, ahead of Joe Moose de Almeida and behind Jake Morrill, as well as John Alosa. He is 11th in the wildcard standings. He needs to pass Joe Rocherlo, Jacob Morrill, and Paul Mativier to be able to get into the wild card bracket for the playoffs, at least as of February 21st. Rob Brown currently looking at the 2, the 5, the 4, and the 7 pins, and he takes out only the 5 pin, and he's looking at a 7, 8, 9, or 10 box now. And it looks like he is going to end up with another 9 box, 2 9 boxes in a row for Rob Brown. That's 59 after 7 for Mr. Brown. Rob Brown's high single is 143. High series is 582. Rob Brown punching out directly through the center, spread eagle plus additionals. The 2, the 3, the 4, and the 7 pins left on the deck. The 2 pin is an orange pin. Rob Brown trying to cut across by going for the 3 pin on the wood that was across the 3 pin, but it doesn't get much help out of it. He will clean up for a 10 box though. Rob Brown is currently sitting at 69 after 8. Rob Brown is at 27 strikes, 125 spares, and 133 tens for the season as of February 21st, 2024. His perfect box percentage is 44. Compare that to Eric Hallee's 51%. Rob Brown missing the head pin off to the left. He has 6,741 seasonal total pins, with 27 out of 70 games under 100 for Rob Brown, with 13 matches bowled so far. Rob Brown still hunting for a mark, hasn't gotten one just yet, but he will take another 10 box, his second 10 box in a row, and he is currently at 79 after 9. Rob Brown off to a bit of a rough start here at Lakeside Lanes for this opening game. Still plenty of bowling to go here though, folks. Always potential for a mark to happen at any point, as is the standard for Candlepin bowling. Rob Brown hits the 1-3 pocket, but wow, he gets way fewer pins than I really thought he deserved there based on that hit. For an admittedly difficult spare shot, he's left with the 4 and the 10 pins now for only a 10 box opportunity now. 8, 9, or 10 box for Rob Brown. He's just waiting for that piece of wood to settle as he stopped on his approach, but again, this is just a 10 box opportunity for Mr. Rob Brown, and that is a 10 box for Rob Brown, and he is going to conclude his first game with an oddly low, uncharacteristically low 89 in the first game for Rob Brown. His season average is 103.71. Eric Hallee Sr. with a 49.5, also somewhat low for his season average of 108.45, so we'll see what Eric Hallee Sr. can come up with. If he can rustle up 50 points to take the first game for 2 points here at the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour in Manchester, New Hampshire at Lakeside Lanes. Lakeside Lanes is located right off of Exit 1 on 101, right next to Mojo's. Really nice breakfast, lunch, and dinner kind of place right next to Lakeside Lanes in the same parking lot even. Great mimosas. They have Guinness on tap. Great atmosphere. They're also across the street from Ritz's Pizza and a short drive from the Puritan Back Room in Manchester, New Hampshire. It's actually where I just came from prior to this match. Great mudslides at the Puritan Back Room. Lakeside Lanes uses manual scoring and manual lane resetting, with CompuScore being the scoring software used, as Eric Hallee Sr. will start off his second half with a 9 box for 58 after 6. Compare that to Rob Brown's 50 after 6. So both bowlers bowling slightly low scores at the moment, but at the moment I'm not willing to say who I think is going to win at this point, because it's still somewhat up in the air unless Eric can pull out a mark here, but that will definitely not help. Eric Hallee Sr. punches out the 4 pin for what some will call a lemon drop. Compared to Leda Lanes, Lakeside Lanes' ball returns are positioned a bit further down the approach, about 4 or 5 feet from what I can tell. This may vary slightly out This may slightly alter your perception of lane length, as well as maybe mess with where your starting position is when you go to bowl at Lakeside Lanes if you're used to Leda lanes as approaches. Same with Riverwalk or Academy or Central Park lanes as well. That's an 8 box for Eric Hallee Sr., so both bowlers are really struggling to get marks right now. Eric Hallee Sr. is at 66 after 7. Compare that to 59 after 7 for Rob Brown, so I gotta say, this is definitely still potentially anyone's game here. If Eric Hallee Sr. can't get to 89 and 10, this will be very interesting in terms of point spreads, given their averages. Eric Hallee Sr. drops 8 for a potential easy spare opportunity, the 6 and the 10 pins on the deck, with some wood in front of them. Eric Hallee Sr. for the spare, and wow, he misses it to the left. Really odd. That makes you kind of wonder if there's something going on that's affecting both bowlers' aim right now. Sometimes I have a running unscientific theory that it could be something to do with the heat and humidity. It is a rather humid day. And sometimes that can kind of mess with you if you're used to like really cold, dry days bowling. Anyways, that's a 10 box for Eric Hallee Sr., 76 after 8 versus 69 after 8 for Rob Brown. Still somewhat close of a match, but if Eric Hallee can at least just maintain reasonably high 2 boxes here at the end of the second half of the first game, he will take the first game for 2 points at a potential 14. Eric Hallee Sr.'s opening ball of his 9th frame, right through the center, plus some additional pins. That's a spread eagle minus the 10 pin, the 2, the 3, the 4, the 6, and the 7 pins on the deck for Eric Hallee Sr. For a spare now, he had to hit the left side pocket if he wanted any hope of getting that, but he only takes out the 4 and the 7 pins, leaving the 2, the 3, and the 6 pins on the deck. For 7, 8, 9, or 10, I think he's probably going to have to settle for a 9 box potentially, and that is precisely what he is going to go for. That's a 9 box for Hallee Sr. for 85 and 9. 85 and 9 for Hallee Sr. versus 79 and 9 for Rob Brown. He needs to get a 5 box or better to secure 2 points for the first game. Let's see what Eric Hallee Sr. can do. Compared to Leda's mid-lane guiding arrows, which are positioned... Ooh, that was almost a strike by Eric Hallee on the pocket, taking out everything but the 7 pin. Compared to Leda's mid-lane guiding arrows, which are positioned all at the same y-axis, Lakeside's guiding arrows start closest to the bowler at their opposite ends, with the middle arrow positioned closer to the head pin by a few inches. If you're like me and use those arrows to align your shots and position yourself in space and time, you may need to adjust a few things here at Lakeside Lanes. As Eric misses the spare, so he has 9, so he does have the first game at the very least. He's going for a 10 box now for a potential 95 first game. That will be a 95 for the first game. Eric Hallee Sr. takes the first game by 6. For 2 points for Eric Hallee Sr., both bowlers bowling under average so far. Eric Hallee Sr. with an average of 108.45 thus far for the season. Rob Brown with a season average of 103.71 for the season. And just to remind you, the ACST match format, it is a 5-string match tonight. Both bowlers are bowling for standings points. 2 points earned for each string 1 unless it's a tie, then it's 1 pin. 4 points earned for the total at the end. It's an 18-match season. 4 division leaders and 4 wild cards. It's a little bit like the NFL in terms of point distribution and overall seasonal statistics. So if you know how the NFL works, you generally will understand how the ACST works. But we are going to be starting the second game here. We have Rob Brown once again starting out on lane 23 at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. Rob Brown, opening ball. Slightly off the left of the center of the lane in general. Lemon drop plus. 4 pin and the 9 pin down. Second ball, very similar story. Taking out a few more for the road. And it looks like that's potential 5 box or higher for Rob Brown on his third. And it's going to be an 8 box for Rob Brown. 8 box for Rob Brown to start out the second game. Anyways, let's talk about Rob Brown. He's currently 11th. He's still fishing for a wild card spot with a season record of 77 and 105, season average of 103, and a 582 high 5. Rob Brown's opening ball here. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 up on the deck and 6 down. Again, missing the head pin, but potential spare opportunity if he hits full enough on the 1-2 pocket. Brown full in the 1-2 pocket. He must have heard me. That's a spare. Those pins had a family, but hey, it's an open spare. That means you got to make some sacrifices. That's 18 open after 2 for Rob Brown. Rob Brown has only bowled 3 matches under 500 this season. That is an impressive statistic. He's guaranteed at least 1 strike per match so far, if statistics have anything to do with it. Rob Brown filling the spare. Pins are still falling. That looks like that's going to settle for a 7 fill for 25 after 2 for Mr. Brown. We'll see how Rob Brown slices this for a spare. And nearly getting it, but the piece of wood just wasn't cooperative enough. There was also one piece of wood that was dubiously out nearby the line of legality. That's where the line of light, the line of sight, the line of light is, but it looks like that's going to be elected to be a 9-box for Rob Brown, judging by the electronic scoreboard. Wasn't willing to say if I thought it was going to be a 9 or a 10, but the bowlers have elected it is going to be a 9-box for Rob Brown. Rob Brown consistently averages over 100 across all of his matches so far. He has the 9th most 10 boxes in the B class. He has bowled 4 games over 550 and 10 games over 500. Rob missing that spare, leaving only the 2-pin on the deck with some wood behind the 2-pin. Lane 23, that is a 10-box for Rob Brown on his 3rd ball, the 4th box. That's 44 after 4 frames. Here at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire, you are watching the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour. This is a Class B North match between Rob Brown as Tim Lipke is talking about the 50-50 for an adjacent league running right now. It's always great to see a busy Candlepin bowling house, let me tell you. Rob Brown missed the head pin off to the left for his first ball. My apologies, I didn't catch that on the camera there, but the second ball also missing the spare, leaving the 1, the 2, and the 10 pins on lane 23. For the 10 box, it's going to be an 8-box for Rob Brown to conclude the first half of the second game with 52 for Mr. Brown. As Eric Hallee Sr. now goes to start on lane 23. Eric Hallee Sr. lives in Manchester, New Hampshire. His son, Eric Hallee Jr., also present in the audience here. He's an impressive power lifter. Tim Lipke says he's taller than Dad, and I have to agree. Eric's home lanes are Lakeside and Manchester. I watched him throw a great series of games at the recent Lakeside Lanes Thanksgiving doubles tournament just a few months ago. Eric Hallee Sr. will start out on lane 23 with a 7 drop, possibly more. That is an 8 drop. The 6 and the 7 pins left on the deck for Mr. Hallee Sr.
Mystery Pool's worth $48. Number was 94. No winners.
Senior for a spare opportunity, and he will not get it. He will only take out the 6 pin, leaving the 7 pin on the deck. Didn't quite hit the wood the way he needed to hit it. Welcome to Candlepin Bowling. Eric Hallee Sr. for a 10-box, and that's going to be a 9-box, a heartbreaking 9-box. For Hallee Sr., 9 after 1. Compare that to 8 after 1 for Mr. Rob Brown. Eric took the first game with a 95 versus Rob Brown's 89, so Eric Hallee Sr. has at least 2 points so far. It's out of a possible 14. You can shoot the moon if you go 14-0. Eric Hallee Sr. season average 108.45. Punching out left side half Worcester. That is the 2 and the 8 pins. Sent to the morgue on lane 23. Looking to get a spare now. It's always pretty when this shot becomes a spare. Let's see what Eric Hallee Sr. can cook up, and it looks like, oh my goodness, he will just slightly tip over the head pin. Not to hurt it or anything, but right now he's only looking at a 3-box as long as he can get, as long as he misses, but you hope he doesn't. So 3-box or higher now for Eric Hallee Sr. He should redline that piece of wood that's down on the deck for a potential 10-box, and he's going to just skirt by with a 9-box. Second 9 of the game. Second 9 in a row. Sorry, 2 9s in a row. Second 9 of the second game. 18 after 2 for Eric Hallee Sr. Lakeside Lanes is a bit of a slower house. That means often bowlers need to throw a bit of a slower and more methodical ball to ensure that they don't simply punch pins out. As we just saw there, Eric threw somewhat of a slower ball and he took out 8 pins, leaving the 4 and the 10 pins on the deck. Hallee Sr. for a spare. Will he get it? I see, there we go. That ball was a little bit too fast and a little bit too forward. Hitting a little bit too full on the wood, taking out only the 4 pin and not enough force to go over to the 10 pin. Wasting it just moving with forward motion on the Z-axis. That's going to be another 9-box. Third 9-box in a row for Eric Hallee Sr. for 27 after 3. Lakeside Lanes isn't super unforgiving in terms of being a slower house, especially in recent years where we've seen a lot more deck wall action.
Everybody, your 50-50 is worth $88. Last 12 members. Wow, no comment. Last 12 members.
Just waiting on the 50-50 raffle on the PA system.
1279. 1279.
Alrighty. Just waiting on the league's 50-50 raffle going on the PA system there. Anyways, in more recent years, the decks at Lakeside have been a little bit juiced, but I think they're calming down as we're getting into the warmer weather months. Although I don't know if the weather has anything to do with that in particular. The pins will tend to roll, fly, spin, and spread a bit more than they have in the past 1 or 2 years at Lakeside, but kind of depends on the day. To me, it feels just right. I think it's just the right balance of not too crazy, but at the same time, it's not too dead either. So Eric Hallee is still working on a left side half Worcester. And he's got to make something out of this for sure. And that was an excellent out. That's a 7-box for Eric Hallee Sr. out of what it could have potentially been a disastrous 2-box. He's at 34-4. Compare that to Rob Brown's 44-4. So I will not necessarily say that it's something the bowlers are doing. It sounds like it just could be any manner of things. Who knows? But both bowlers are bowling somewhat under average tonight, with Eric's normal season average 108.45 here in his home house. Collides with the pocket, leaving the 2 and the 5 pins on the deck for a potential spare. This might be a layup for Eric Hallee Sr. if he can just hit those 2 pins just right. Let's see what he can do. Senior, lane 23, taking out only the 5 pin, leaving the 2 pin. Went a little bit too much for the pin on the right side and not so much the 2 pin. Hallee Sr. for a 10-box to conclude his half, and that will be a 10-box for Hallee Sr., a markless 44 after 5. Compare that to Rob Brown's markful 52 after 5. So it's almost as if we've reversed roles here in the second game, in which Rob Brown was on the lower side of the first half in the first game, and now Eric Hallee Sr. is decided to take that place. So Rob Brown starting out on lane 24. This is Rob Brown, and then we have also Eric Hallee Sr. Here's some standings reminders. We have Rob Brown still 2 places out of a wild card spot, while Eric Hallee Sr. is a division leader, so he's already sitting in the division leader spot. To give you a visual on how that is working. Anyways, we have Rob Brown on lane 24 at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. That's a 7-drop for Rob Brown. For the 3, the 6, and the 10 pins on the deck for Rob Brown. Here's a spare, possibly coming down the lane, and unfortunately he only hits the 10 pin. So now it's just going to be an 8, 9, or 10 box for Rob Brown. Pending third ball. That third ball is a 10 box, taking out the last 2 on the deck. So Rob Brown will take a 10 box for 62, I believe, after 6, and that is correct. We're off to the races. So yeah, that's the standings. We have Rob Brown 2 spots out of a wild card. He's overall 3rd in his division, B North Division 1. Rob Brown, lane 24, 7-drop, leaving the 4 horsemen left side minus the 7 pin. The 1, the 2, and the 4 pins are left on the deck. Rob Brown, 4 spare, and he misses it wide right. So now he's looking at a 7, 8, 9, or 10 box. Potential. So yes, that's the 1, the 2, and the 4 pins. If the 7 pin in the back left corner was standing, it would have been called the 4 horseman left side. Rob Brown going for a 10 box here. That's the 10 box. That's the 3-ball spare, the Paul Grant special. But unfortunately, it's only a 10 box. Second 10 box in a row. That's 72 after 7 for Rob Brown now. Rob Brown, season average 103.71, season record of 77 and 105. He's been, in recent weeks, starting to bounce back a little bit. He was in 4th place in his division, but he's risen up to 3rd, and a couple more good matches, and I think he'll be back in it. Rob Brown for a spare, he nearly gets it. That 10-pin, very resilient and resistant to all the wood dancing around it somehow. So now Rob is looking at a 9 or a 10 box here in the 8th in the second game. That's a 10 box for Rob Brown. 3rd 10 box in a row, triple X. That's 82 after 8 for Rob Brown now. 82 after 8. Again, here's another look at the standings in case you need to see it. Rob Brown, 3rd in B North Division 1 ahead of Joe De Almeida and behind John Alosa and Jake Morrill. John Alosa in particular has had a really good season, and Jake Morrill also starting out good, but he's been struggling in the last couple of matches. Rob Brown recently played against Casey McCool in Lakeside Riverwalk Lanes, also covered by myself. He took 10 points to Casey's 4 that match with 1 strike, 6 spares, and 11 tens. He had a 501 series, and the best game was his 4th at a 124. And Rob Brown, again, struggling to get the spares, just barely missing these spares, leaving 1 pin on the deck almost every time, with the 7 pin standing this time. And he knocks over that 7 pin, not to hurt it. That's another 10 box for Rob Brown, his 4th 10 box in a row for 92 in 9 for Rob Brown. He is 9th place for most 10s in B class at 133 10s. He has 4 games over 550 and 10 games over 500. His home house is Riverwalk Lanes in Amesbury, Massachusetts. Rob, I've seen him bowl both right and left-handed in league play and ACST play. He throws a very fast, hard ball, but I know tonight he seems to be taking the edge off just a little bit. So Rob appears to have dropped 5. And we might be just dealing with a bit of a slow ball return because we're just waiting on some balls to come back, particularly the bowler's own bowling balls. That's always important. Rob Brown for the spare, and he just cuts across and leaves, again, 1 pin on the deck, and can't say that was his fault. That last pin just refusing to fall for Rob Brown. Will he get his 5th 10 box in a row? No, he will break the streak of 5 10s in a row with a 9 box for 101 in his second game for a 2-game total of 190 for Mr. Rob Brown. So 101 is the benchmark for Eric Hallee Sr. to beat. Away bowler coming up from Amesbury, Massachusetts. I would say it's probably about maybe a 90-ish minute drive or so, depending on how fast you drive. Eric Hallee Sr. now needs to get to 101 or better to take points this game. Eric Hallee Sr. with a season average of 108.45, and will we see this first strike of the match? Not quite. The 7-pin wiggling but not quite falling on lane 24. Eric's season record 77 and 77. A 1.0 ratio for wins and losses. Eric for the spare. I believe that's a legal spare. We'll see what the bowlers say about that. I will hesitate to say what that will be until we officially see it up on the electronic scoreboard. They're also discussing it. I will potentially put a spare until Rob decides what it is. Just for the sake of argument, it's either a 10 or a spare. Could be one of those things we'll be debating in comments. I will not be the one to judge on that. Anyways, that's 7. Potential 7 fill if that is deemed to be a spare for Eric Hallee Sr. Excuse me. Will he get another spare? That definitively is a spare. No debate there. It's a potential open 71. And I will confirm that score momentarily. I think Rob just forgot to enter that up on the electronic scoreboard there. So pending what that is, we'll catch up with that in a little bit. It's a 5 drop, 5 fill for Eric Hallee Sr. in the 7th. And he did indeed put that in as a... Okay, it's going to be a 9 box in the 6, so glad I waited. So it's a 5 fill spare. But anyways, that's another spare for Hallee Sr. He's turning on the spare machine for sure. So a 9 in the 6th, a spare 5 in the 7th, and a spare in the 8th. Open 78 for Hallee Sr. now. I think we are now caught up with Compy score. Eric filling that spare with 6. 4 horsemen left side on the deck. 4 horsemen left side. Will he get another spare here? If he didn't foul out that spare on the 6th box, it could have been 4 potential 4 spares in a row here. But wasn't meant to be, so it's only 2 spares in a row for Eric Hallee Sr. Potential 8, 9, or 10 box opportunity now in the 9th frame of the 2nd game for Eric Hallee Sr. He has to get to 101 or better to tie or win. It's a 9 box for Eric, putting him at what I believe should be a 93 after 9. And that is confirmed. I just checked with Compy's score with what Rob is scoring down at the score table. So he has to get to 101 or better to get some points for this game. Eric Hallee Sr. with 2 marks, 93 and 9. Compare that to a single mark 101 for Rob Brown. Rob Brown dropping 6, an awkward 6, a picket fence back row minus the 10 pin, replace it with a 6 pin instead with a piece of wood that is still settling down on the deck. As I adjust my camera a little bit to get a little bit extra visibility here. Let's see how Eric can do this, how he approaches this for a potential spare. And he only takes out the 8 and the 9 pins, leaving the 6 and the 7 pins, so it's only a potential 8, 9, or 10 box. If he gets an 8, that's a tie. If he gets a 9, it's a win. So tie or win for Eric right now. It's going to be a tie. It's going to be a tie. Wow, so 101 to 101. 2-game total of 190 for Rob Brown. 2-game total of 196 for Eric Hallee Sr. He's up in the match by 6. Really interesting match tonight here. We have 3 points so far going to Eric Hallee Sr. and 1 point going to Rob Brown after 2 games here at the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour. Quite a match. If you're just tuning in, welcome to an awesome Friday night B-Class Northern Conference match, the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour. We have Rob Brown and Eric Hallee Sr. battling at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire tonight. We are just about to start the 3rd game. Some standings for you. We have Rob Brown in particular fighting for a wildcard spot where Eric Hallee Sr. is divisional leader. Just fighting to keep his spot. Rob Brown starting out on lane 23, at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. Missing the head pin off to the right, 4 horsemen left side, plus the 5, then 8 and the 9 pins. Takes out everything but the single head pin, the 1 pin. And he's looking for a 10 box, and he will not get that 10 box. He'll take a 9 box. Rob Brown. Rob Brown with a 44% perfect box percentage, 6,741 seasonal total pins. Only 27 out of 70 games bowled so far have been under 100 for Mr. Brown. Rob Brown punching full on the head pin, a little bit too full. Banana split minus the 6 pin. We got the 4, the 7, and the 10 pin on the deck with some favorable wood for a potential spare for Rob Brown. How's he going to get it? Well, he hits it the right way, but that piece of wood didn't quite slide over far back enough to take out the 10 pin. So he's left with a 9 or 10 box opportunity now for Mr. Brown. Only 3 of Rob Brown's matches have totaled under 500 this season. And I believe they are going to go for a 9 box based on that head shake there from Rob Brown. So that's an 18 after 2 for Rob Brown. Rob Brown now up in the match by 12 minus 18, really, if you factor out these two boxes he's ahead by. Rob Brown, 4 and 7 left on the deck. Potential spare, piece of wood perpendicular across the 4 and the 7. Will he get that spare? And oh, he misses the wood that he needed to go for. Fortunately, that just didn't work out for him. The 4 and the 7 pins left on the deck. 8, 9, or 10 box for Rob Brown, and that was the ball he was looking for. That's a 10 box for Rob Brown for 28 after 3. here at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. Rob Brown missing the head pin off to the right. 4 horsemen left side plus the 5 and the 8 pins on the deck. Potential spare. Hits full in the head pin, and wow, it's like the ball and the pins just traveled straight through the pins. No spare for Rob Brown, but he will take a 10 box as a consolation prize. His second 10 box in a row after 2 9 boxes in a row. That's 38 after 4 for Rob Brown. So 38 after 4 for Rob Brown. Rob Brown just fishing for a mark. Will this be the first strike of the match? Not quite. Takes out everything but the 9 pin. As he's fishing for a mark. For a spare, he misses the 10 pin again. Wow. So it's a 9 or 10 box opportunity for Rob Brown now. Rob Brown going for the 10. That is the 10. It's the third 10 box in a row. That's 48 after 5 for Rob Brown. Struggling in this half. So many potential mark opportunities that he just barely missed for reasons I cannot exactly comprehend. But he's sitting at 48 after 5, markless in the third, for a 2.5 game total of 238. Mr. Brown. Again, here he is. 77-105 record so far, not counting this match. 27 strikes, 125 spares, 133 tens. Out of 13 matches bowled so far with a 44% perfect box percentage. And we also have Eric Hallee Sr., who's going to be starting out here on lane 23, 77-77. He's a divisional leader. 4th overall, divisional leader of Class B North, Division 4. Hallee Sr.'s opening ball of the third game here. An awkward 4-drop. 4 horsemen left side, plus the 9 and the 10 pins out on the deck. If he hits the 1-2 pocket, I think he has a shot at it, but we'll see how Eric Hallee can cook it up. Fortunately, he misses that 1-2 pocket entirely, taking out only the 9 pin for a potential 5 box or higher now. For Hallee Sr. That is going to be what appears to be an 8 box, hard-fought 8 box for Eric Hallee Sr. 8 after 1. 8 after 1 for Hallee Sr. versus 9 after 1 for Rob Brown. Eric Hallee Sr. has yet to throw a match without a total of 500 or higher this season. He's got 1 game over 600. Bowling over 600 is particularly difficult in Candlepin bowling, I gotta say. Requires a lot of focus. You have to have a very high benchmark to get up there. A lot of focus. Can't make a lot of mistakes. Gotta get a lot of marks. Eric Hallee Sr. with a 7 drop, the 6-7-10 split. And he decided to try to go for the wood on the left side, but the wood didn't really help him at all. He was left with the 6 and the 10 pins. Now he's looking at an 8, 9, or 10 box potentially here. And I believe that is going to be a 9 box for 17 after 2 versus 18 after 2. So Eric Hallee Sr. down by 1 in this game so far, the same equivalent point in the match where Rob Brown left off. Eric Hallee Sr. hopefully will have better luck in terms of finding marks, but that remains to be seen here. Let's see what Eric Hallee Sr. can come up with here on the 3rd box of the 3rd game here in Manchester, New Hampshire at Lakeside Lanes. On the head pin, right on the head pin, drops a couple extra pins, leaving the 7 and the 8 pins with a piece of wood that may be rolling just out of reach. He's going to have to hope that it stops in the right place and hope that he can hit it in the right way with the right velocity that can take out the 8 and the 7 pins in that order. Unfortunately, he didn't go for that piece of wood. He decided to just take the loss and go for as many pins as possible, pinning it out. Takes the 8 pin. Now he's going to go for the 7 pin potentially for a 10 box. Will he get that 10 box? He will get a 9 box. Eric Hallee Sr. faltering in the 3rd here for 26 after 3 versus Rob Brown's 28 after 3. 2 boxes to go here. This somewhat markless 3rd game. Eric Hallee Sr. with a 95 and then a 101. Both bowlers tied in the second game, taking 1 point apiece with dueling 101s in stereo. Hallee Sr. full on the head pin again, leaving the 2, the 4, and the 6 pins on lane 23. No wood to help him either. I gotta say, it's been an interesting house tonight where the pins just aren't falling for either bowler, I gotta say. So this has been a really interesting match in terms of lack of action in particular. Probably not the most fun match to watch in terms of action, but when you start thinking about how both bowlers are struggling, it really is something to behold. Just a 6 pin left for Eric Hallee Sr. for a potential 10 box. It's going to be a 9 box for Hallee Sr. for 35 after 4. Compare that to 38 after 4 for Rob Brown. Equivalent box of the game. 1 box left to go for Eric Hallee Sr. to reach 48 after 5. Let's see if he can make it. A spare and a 3 fill will get him there, so he needs a mark at the minimum. On the head pin, 1-2 pocket. Ball gets out of dodge a little bit too quickly to take out the pins on the right side. 6 drop, 4 up, 3, 5, 6, and 10 pins on the deck for Eric Hallee Sr. 4 spare. Senior takes out only the 5 pin. Now he's looking at a potential 7, 8, 9, or 10 box. For the 10, it's going to be an 8 box. Wow. So Rob Brown will retain his lead in the first half of the third game. 48 for Rob Brown after 5. 43 for Eric Hallee Sr. after 5. Eric Hallee Sr. retains the match lead by 1. Rob Brown is up in the game by 5 and down in the overall match by just 1. It's been certainly an interesting night so far for both bowlers. Both bowlers bowling somewhat under average tonight. And I put somewhat in lowercase letters because it's not something you necessarily want to see, but it seems to be something that both bowlers are struggling with tonight as Rob Brown misses the head pin off to the right, leaving the 4 horsemen left side, the 1, the 2, the 4, and the 7 pins on lane 24, Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. He collides with the 2 and the 4 pin pocket, leaving the 1 pin and the 1 pin only for a 9 or 10 box opportunity for Mr. Rob Brown. And that's going to be a 9 box for Rob Brown, leaving him at 57 in 6. 57 in 6 for Mr. Rob Brown from Riverwalk Lanes in Amesbury, Massachusetts. Lane 24, again missing the head pin to the right. It's almost as if I think I'm starting to somewhat see a pattern here. It's almost as if he needs to take 1 step to the left when he throws that ball to correct that, but that is a 5 drop. Second ball, he almost gets the spare, leaving only the 8 pin on the deck. Piece of wood rolling around down there, waiting for it to settle. See if we can get this 10 box now. And none of the wood is really playing nice with them. That's another 9 box for 66 in 7 for Rob Brown now. Again, markless here at the end of the 7th. 66 in 7 with 3 to go. Rob Brown normally averaging 103.71, and I've just been bragging about how only 3 of his matches have totaled below 500 so far, so I hope I haven't jinxed anybody. My apologies if that ends up happening, but sometimes that just happens. 4 drop for Rob Brown off the head pin to the left on this first ball this time, and nearly gets it on the second ball. Again, almost getting the spare, but leaving a corner pin. Seems to always be a corner pin that sticks around for the spare bid. That's a 10 box for Rob Brown. 76 and 8 with 2 to go. He's bowled only 9s and 10s this third string so far, with 3 10s in a row, buttressed by 2 9 boxes in a row on each side with a 10 box he just threw. Brown on the head pin with a much better leaf this time, but he drops 7, leaving the 2, the 7, and the 8 pins with some potential wood here. Let's see what Rob Brown can do. Will he get it? Heartbreaker. He hits not full, but not exactly in a way that favors the 7 pin. Again, another corner pin not going. That's a 10 box for Rob Brown in the 9th. frustrating. I almost feel that frustration for him. That's 86 and 9 for Rob Brown now. Again, Rob throwing an impressive game of 9s and 10s. This is a clinic of 9s and 10s today from Rob Brown. Rob Brown wasting no time for the first ball of the final box, and he takes out 9, leaving only the 6 pin on the deck. For a potential spare now, he seems to be slowly working on the issue with the first ball, not connecting with the pocket of the head pin. See if Rob can get his first mark of this game, and he will. That's a spare for Rob Brown. Open 96 in 10 with 1 ball to go. 96 plus a ball for Rob Brown. It looks at this point he's not going to have a 303 game total, but he'll get close. And he'll conclude with a 7. It's going to be a 7 fill for Rob Brown for a 103 third game. 103 third game for Rob Brown for a 3-game total of 293. It's his best game yet after an 89 and a 101, so he's steadily improving, but still somewhat under average for the night. 103.71 is his normal average. And we're going to switch the floor back to Eric Hallee Sr. now on lane 24, our divisional leader from Class B North Division 4. Eric Hallee Sr. finishing out the second half of the third game now. Eric off the head pin to the right once again. Sounds like I'm repeating myself, but that's actually what's happening. The 4 has been left side plus the 9 pin on lane 24 for Hallee Sr. Hallee Sr. for a spare and takes out 3 more and leaves the 1 and the 7 pins on the deck. Eric Hallee Sr. has 4 games over 550 and 1 game over 100. Recently took 11 points against Tony LeVake and 2 points against Joe Rochelot. That's an 8 box for Eric Hallee Sr. 51 after 6. He has to get to 103 or better to tie or win this third game. So 103 for 1 point, greater than 103 for 2 points. He's currently taken the first game and half of the second game, so he has 3 points so far. Hallee Sr. opening ball, the 7th frame, takes out 6, leaving the 5, the 3, the 6, and the 10 pins on the deck. A no wood right side check mark. For spare, Eric Hallee Sr. on lane 24. Will he get it? Leaving everything but the 5 pin. Wow, he looks like... Our bowlers are... I gotta say, they're hitting the right places, but the pins just are flying around the final object pin for the spare. And again, it's just such a strange thing to observe here. And some days, I've seen this happen in league for multitudes of bowlers, pluralities of bowlers, and hard to explain in Candlepin. So many other factors you never think about in 10 pins. So that's 61 and 7 for Eric Hallee Sr. with that 10 box. It's not yet up on the CompuScore, but you saw it here, folks. Opening ball, the 8th frame for Eric Hallee Sr. is a traditional spread eagle, a 4-drop straight through the center. The 1, the 5, the 8, and the 9 pins taken out. It's a difficult spare. You have to hit one of the 2 pockets on the left or the right, depending on your handedness and which one you're comfortable with. Eric Hallee Sr. chooses the left side, but he only gets the 7 pin, overshooting a little bit. So now he's looking at a 5 box or greater. 2, the 3, the 4, the 6, and the 10 pins on the deck with no wood to help him out. This is a tough spot for Eric Hallee Sr. and maybe a definitive point in this third game in terms of point distribution. That is going to be ouch. That's going to be a 6 box for Eric. Leaving the 2, the 3, the 4, and the 10 pins for 67 and 8. Compare that to 76 and 8 for Rob Brown. Low scoring, but still somewhat of a nail-biter here. Eric Hallee Sr. with a higher average than Rob Brown, but he's been struggling almost as much as Rob Brown. Both bowlers have been kind of trading blows back and forth in terms of their struggles. A 24th lane, Lakeside lanes. Eric Hallee Sr. has a slow leave here, leaving the 1, the 5, the 9, and the 10 pins. Get a closer look at that. He sort of has to hit full on the head pin to take out the 5 as well as the 9 and the 10 pins. See what Eric Hallee Sr. can do. Missed the head pin, hit the 5 pin, took out the 9 and the 10 pins, leaving that 1 pin that he missed. The 1 pin, the head pin. 9 or 10 bucks now for Eric Hallee Sr. Eric Hallee Sr., 32 strikes, 97 spares, 126 tens. That's another 10 bucks to add to that count. It's not his first 10 of the match, but it's another one. That's 77 and 9 for Eric Hallee Sr. And oh boy, he's got some work to do. I gotta say, I think it's probably going to be a potential... it's likely probably going to have to be a triple strike for him to catch up to that 103 at this point. So let's see what Eric Hallee Sr. can do. First ball. Needs to be a strike. It's not going to be a strike. It's going to be an 8 drop, so I believe that's going to be the third game going to Rob Brown now. So we know a match, folks. Plenty of points to go around for all of our bowlers. The 6 and the 7 pins for a spare for Eric Hallee Sr. Senior for the spare, and wow. Again, he hit the wood and hit the object pin just the right way, but stuff just isn't falling. So he's going to have a potential 87 if he can take the 7 pin out. 87 it will be for that 10 box. Except for Rob Brown's spare, it's been a markless third game for both bowlers. Again, except for that spare for Rob Brown, which more or less kind of really propelled him over into guaranteed 2 points. 87 after 3 for Eric Hallee Sr. 3-game total of 283 and a 3-game total of 293 for Rob Brown. Rob Brown has really turned this around. He's now up in the match by 10, and he's taken 2 points after 3. And our bowlers are going to take a quick timeout just to take a break. It's been 3 games, so we'll call this halftime. That'll give us some chance to talk about our bowlers while they are away and while we have a chance to take a breather. So let's take a look at Eric Hallee Sr. once more. Talk about Eric Hallee Sr. He's a fantastic person to talk to and bowl with. I know he has also been a challenge to bowl against. I know when I bowled against him, he definitely took me to the cleaners, and somewhat uncharacteristic to see him bowling so under average here tonight. And I definitely don't think it's just him, though. I know Rob Brown's been struggling equally. Sometimes it's just the atmosphere or the weather, humidity, you know, kind of like our lecture about the weather earlier. That just kind of happens. But Eric Hallee Sr. has been maintaining his record of 77 and 77. He's still a divisional leader. And we'll take a look at the standings here. We have Eric Hallee Sr. in the divisional leader bracket, and he's maintaining that lead. And we also have Rob Brown, though, fighting for a wild card spot. He's only 2 places out of it. He has to pass Jacob Morrill and Paul Mativier. So Rob Brown not necessarily out of the standings just yet. A couple more good matches, and he'll definitely be there. And then we'll take a look at Division 1 and Division 4 of Class B, just to give you some additional greater context. We have Rob Brown, who's 3rd in Division 1. And Jacob Morrill is one of the folks he has to pass to get to the wildcard standings. And again, John Alosa holding strong at the top of Division 1. He just can't be caught. He has a very high win-loss ratio right now. Rob Brown has been struggling this season, but he's been kind of bouncing back. And again, things can turn around at the drop of a hat, given the 14 points that you can potentially take in matches at the ACST. I know Jake Morrill in particular has been struggling a little bit as of recently. Dominic Palladino recently taking 14 against Jake Morrill. And Joe Moose de Almeida has also been struggling this season as well. So sometimes if the entire division is struggling, that can usually mean there can be wild swings in positions and places. And that can mean the whole world when it comes to the wildcard standings. Meanwhile, Eric Hallee Sr. has been maintaining the top of Division 4, mostly because so far he's been the only person in Division 4 to maintain a 1.0 win-loss ratio. And exactly 1.0. It's 77 and 77. Exactly 500 compared to 407, 369, and 372 for David LaRoche, Faye Sawyer, and Casey McCool. So, but sometimes that's all you really need. And again, this is like the NFL in terms of divisions. You just have to be at the top of your division to get into the playoff picture along with the wild card. And let's talk about Lakeside Lanes. I know we have briefly touched upon this earlier, but again, Lakeside Lanes established the same year as Leda Lanes, November 27th, 1959, with 24 lanes. All wood approaches, all wood lanes. Lakeside Lanes had a bit of a renovation as of maybe a decade and some change ago. It used to have more of a red theme. Some of the red theme is still around, but it's more of a kind of a grayish, whitish, orange, green, bluish kind of palette now. And that's to correspond with the glow bowling that's been put in. We also have the 25th lane here at Lakeside Lanes, which is sort of like the bar slash restaurant slash party room area of Lakeside Lanes, next to Mojo's and Ritza's Pizza, nearby the Massabesic Lake. WMUR loves Lakeside Lanes. It voted them Viewer's Choice Best Bowling Alley 4 times across several years. 2015, 2017, 2019, and 2021. And our bowlers have returned from their break, and we are going to start the 4th game. So thank you for bearing with us. And if you're just tuning in, hey, we still have 2 games to go here at the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour. If you're just tuning in, here's what we're doing tonight. It's Rob Brown versus Eric Hallee Sr. on this February 23rd, 2024, in round 13 at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. Rob Brown starting out on lane 23 with a 7 drop. Rob Brown seems he's a little bit more energized from the 3rd game, in which he took the 3rd game, taking 2 points, 103 to 80. Eric Hallee's 87. Rob Brown's 2nd ball just missing the head pin, leaving only the head pin. It was a 1-3-10 on the deck, taking out the 3 and the 10, and he leaves the 1, and that's where the 1 will remain for a 9-box for Rob Brown. In the start of the 4th game here at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. Rob Brown's seasonal record of 77 and 105. Eric Hallee Sr.'s seasonal record of 77-77. Is this our first strike of the match? It's our first strike of the match for Rob Brown. Can you believe it? It took us 4 games to get here, but we finally have seen our first strike in this B-class match for Rob Brown. Or Eric Hallee Sr. No, Eric has yet to throw a strike. But that was the first strike we've seen tonight. Sometimes a smoke break is all you need. Rob Brown's first ball of that strike fill is a 6 drop. He gets 1 more ball. Potential spare here. See what Rob Brown can do. And he takes out the 1 and the 5 for 2 more. That's an 8 fill total. That's 27 after 2 for Rob Brown. Going for a 10 box. That will be a 10 box. Full shot, but he did take it. 37 after 3 for Rob Brown. To start out the 4th game. Rob Brown's starting out hot here. Brown drops 7, leaving the 3, the 5, and the 6 pins on the deck. We call that the right side diamond minus the 9 pin if this were the WCVB Channel 5 show. Let's see if Rob Brown can get the spare here, and I think he was kind of counting on that wood to take out the 3 pin based on that miss of the pocket, hitting only the 5 pin on the left side. Going for a 10 box. That will be another 10 box for Rob Brown. Still doing very well with 47 after 4. With 1 box to go before he sits, believe it or not. Rob Brown, again missing the head pin, but dropping 6. 1, 7, 8, and 10 pins on the deck on lane 23, excuse me. I apparently can't read the lane numbers tonight. Rob Brown for a spare. Wow, he somehow manages to hit nothing, capping a piece of wood in front of the 8 pin and taking out nothing. And just barely tipping over the head pin. That's a 7 box for Rob Brown for 54 and 5. So if you're watching this and wondering what Candlepin bowling is a sport in which a player rolls a ball down a lane in an attempt to knock down up to 10 pins in a frame, which is also known as a box in the Candlepin lingo. Depending on how soon those 10 pins are knocked down, the amount of points awarded to the total score become more valuable and offer more chances to compound and provide higher returns. For example, knocking down 9 pins in the first ball And then the 10th pin in the second ball is known as a mark and results in what is called a spare, in which the first ball of the next frame effectively awards double. That's known as a fill. For strikes in which all pins are knocked down in the first ball, the same rule applies as spares, but in Candlepin, the first 2 balls count towards the fill value. Compared to 10-pin bowling, Candlepin allows for up to 3 balls thrown in a frame as opposed to the maximum of 2 in 10-pin. And in Candlepin, knocking down all 10 pins at the third ball results in a 10 box. Think of it as a spare with a 0 fill. Anyways, that is a spare, I believe, for Eric Hallee Sr. after that 7 drop. If I didn't lose count of the amount of balls thrown, my apologies if I did. Yep, that is a spare. I was just waiting on the compy score for confirmation. We're keeping score in 3 ways. We have a paper copy, we have a compy score copy, and then we have the stream copy. So we have a 3-way validation going on. That was a 4 fill for Eric Hallee Sr. on that spare. 14 after 1. One of the coolest things about Candlepin bowling is that it's more of an accessible game compared to 10-pin bowling. Why? Well, for one, the bowling balls are significantly smaller and lighter, lessening strength and age requirements by a significant margin. According to the official International Candlepin Bowling Association rules and regulations located on candlepin.org, 2 consecutive strikes scores as follows. In the frame in which the first strike is... I'll just pause as a 7 box for Eric Hallee Sr., 21 after 2. Anyways, in the frame in which the first strike is made, score 20 plus the number downed by the first ball rolled in the second following frame. Then, in the frame in which the second strike is made, score 10 plus the number downed by the first 2 balls in the next following frame. Multiple strikes can be very confusing to score, especially if you have a paper copy, let me tell you. I know when I was bowling down at Central Park Lanes in a 9-pin tournament where they only have paper scoring, had a teammate who started bowling multiple strikes in a row, and I had to ask a couple of people around me to verify the scores because sometimes it can just get very confusing because you have to backfill several boxes worth of fills. If you're not used to doing that on paper, that can get very confusing very fast, and it can be very easy to fall behind. Eric Hallee Sr. left with just the 7 pin on lane 23 for a 9 or 10 box potential here. Hallee Sr. will take a 10 box for 31 after 3. Compare that to Rob Brown's 37 after 3. Bit more of an invigorated, more energized 4th game here after our bowlers took a quick break. Rob Brown's season average is 103.71. Eric Hallee Sr.'s average is 108.45 for the season. Both bowlers seem to be bowling a lot closer to their average now as of this first half of the 4th game compared to the first 3 games. Eric right on the head pin. That's Eric Hallee's first strike of the match. For an open 41 plus 2 balls in the 4th. With 1 to go to conclude the first half of the 4th game here at the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour Class B North. My name is Steve Kelly. A pleasure as always to have you along, streaming online on Facebook and available later on for viewing at any point. Eric Hallee Sr. filling that spare with 7. Excuse me, filling that strike with 7. What was I saying? He has 1 ball to go. There's been so many spares and not enough strikes today. I've been just assuming that's been a spare. That's an 8 fill total. 7 then 1, 49 after 4 for Eric Hallee Sr. Passing Rob Brown's 47 after 4. 1 ball to go to conclude the half for Eric Hallee Sr. in the 4th game. 10 box puts him at 59 after 5. Now we have a game, and things are waking up a little bit more here. 54 half for Rob Brown, 59 half for Eric Hallee Sr. As we now move to start the second half here, we have Rob Brown stepping up to the plate. On lane 24 at Lakeside Lanes, Manchester, New Hampshire. If you're just tuning in, this is the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour, a season-long series of one-on-one Candlepin bowling matches between challengers organized into classes and divisions, competing for playoff contention. If you're just tuning in, thank you for checking out this Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour match between away bowler Rob Brown and home bowler Eric Hallee Sr. at Manchester, New Hampshire at Lakeside Lanes. Rob Brown's struggling to get some pins there. Looks like it's going to be a 6-box for Rob. For 60 after 6 sent for the first box of the second half. That's box 6. I think Rob Brown was having some issues with his grip there. He's quickly resolving that. Much better first ball. 8 drop. 1 in the 9 pins on the deck. For a potential spare. And that will be a spare for Rob Brown. Open 70 after 7. For Mr. Brown. If you live in the area or are willing to make the pilgrimage, the Candlepin bowling community would absolutely appreciate your interest and visitation. Check out candlepin.org and click Go Bowling to find your nearest center if you would like to give this unique regional sport a try. That's an 8 fill for Rob Brown. 78 and 7. It's another spare for Rob Brown, nailing those last 2 pins remaining on the deck. 88 open in 8, plus a ball. Rob Brown really turning on the jets now. I think he's kind of found his rhythm now in lane 24. Or after originally picking up that rhythm in lane 23, but that's a heartbreaker of a 2 fill. Punching out straight through the 2 and the 8 pins, sending those to the infirmary. And a little bit full on the center pin shot, but he takes out several more, leaving the 6, the 9, and the 10 pins on the deck for a 7, 8, 9, or 10 box opportunity, with the wood still settling on the deck. And now that it's settled, he's going to throw his 3rd ball, and that's going to be a 10 box for Rob Brown. 109. Every game Rob Brown has thrown tonight has been increasingly better. 89 to 101 to 103, and now we have 101 or 100 plus whatever we get in this 10th frame. Could be a mark, could be 3 marks. We'll see. Let's find out. Rob Brown. This is the head pin to the right. Drop 6, 1, 2, 7, and 10. Lane 24. For the spare. Almost gets it, but the wood just dances around and doesn't quite take out that final pin. So he's looking at a potential 110 4th game here. What's it going to be? That's going to be a 110 for Rob Brown with another 10 box. That's 110 in 4 for a 4-game total of 403. Rob Brown hasn't thrown a match under 500, and he's nearly on pace to continue that trend. 403 4-game total. Eric Hallee Sr. with also a monster 59.5. Let's see if he can follow that up to reach 110 or higher. Rob Brown finally throwing above his average this game. Eric Hallee Sr., meanwhile, he averages 108.45, so he basically has to match Rob Brown to reach his average and also take the game. So it's going to be very interesting how this shakes out here at Lakeside Lanes. On lane 24, Eric Hallee Sr.'s opening ball, nearly a strike. He takes out everything but the 7, and some wood dances around it. But the 7 pin doesn't go down. Potential spare here for Eric Hallee Sr. For the spare, he fires. Hits the wood and the ball careens behind the 7 pin, doesn't take it out. He is now looking at a 9 or a 10 box opportunity. Senior for the 10. It's going to be a 9 box. He misses it just slightly to the left, going into the gutter. That's 68 after 6 for Eric Hallee Sr. Still up by 8, but he's going to have to at least get a mark or 2 to maintain pace and get to that 110 or higher to tie or win. There's already been 1 tie this game. I don't think Eric wants to repeat that again. Let's see what he can do. Eric Hallee Sr., season record 77 and 77. Perfect 1.0 win-loss ratio. Drops 7. 5, 7, and 8 pins on lane 24. And it's going to be a difficult spare opportunity, too. You have to hit the 5 pin the right way. And that was exactly the right way. So that's a spare for Eric Hallee Sr. Perfectly executes the 5 pin across the 7 and the 8 pins. For that spare, open 78 and 7. That's exactly where Rob Brown was in the 7th. If he can get an 8 fill, he'll be right on pace with Rob Brown, and we'll have a really interesting neck-and-neck match Hallee Sr. filling a spare here on lane 24. Senior fires on the pocket. That's an 8 fill. We are exactly in sync with Rob Brown. 9 fill, excuse me. A 1 pin falls late. 87. Excuse me, no. He's at 87 and 7. No, sorry, he's not exactly in sync. I think I got my numbers backwards there. He misses the 4 pin for the spare. We have a piece of wood that is definitely out of play, I gotta say, I think. So probably gonna have to go get it if it doesn't roll out of place, but we'll see where that goes. And it might still be rolling. Rob Brown is gonna go down and check that. I think it is stopped though, or at least it's not gonna be going anywhere by the judging its motion. Yep, that pin is out of play. Just the 4 pin left. This is for a 10 box now for Eric Hallee Sr. My apologies before. I thought we were in sync, but I realized it was actually 1 box off. So Eric Hallee Sr. is at 87 in 7. Compare that to 78 and 7 for Rob Brown. Still a close match though. That's a 9 box for Eric Hallee Sr. 96 and 8, 6 up from Rob Brown's 90 in 8. To clarify the current standings, if we are going box for box. 2 boxes to go. He has to get to 110. Definitely needs a mark, and that's a mark. That was a hammer of a strike. The pin's going down immediately. Those 10 pins had a family, Eric. But he takes him out. That's another hammer strike in the 9th, and that's definitely going to help him. That's probably is going to be the 4th game for Eric Hallee Sr. He needs 4 pins to tie and 5 pins for the win for this 4th game out of 5 games. Eric Hallee Sr. filling that strike on the pocket again. Similar shot, but slightly different hit. That's a banana split. That's a 6 drop, leaving the 4, the 6, the 7, and the 10 pins. With 1 more ball to go, Eric will take the 4th game. That's 2 pins for Eric. 2 points for Eric. Taking 2 more out, there's an 8 fill total. 6th and 2, he's at 114 and 9. Potential for 124 if he can take these 2 additional pins out. 122, 123, or 124. That's 124 for Eric Hallee Sr. Again, his best game of the night so far for a 4-game total of 407. The match lead is only 4 between our 2 bowlers. Eric will take the 4th game by 14 pins. But this is a pretty decently close match in terms of points. We have 1 game to go, but we'll just jump down here for just a moment just to give you an idea of the points awarded. I'll just give you the games 1, 2, 3, and 4 thus far. We have 2 points for Eric in the 1st game and the 4th game, and 1 point in the 2nd. So that's 5 points so far for Eric, and Rob Brown with 3 points so far. But we still have 1 game to go. We have the 5th game here, which is worth 4 points for the total because this is the final game in which you can go for the total. And, of course, there's 2 points involved for if you take the 5th game. So the 5th game is often the most valuable and the most exciting because it's worth the most points potentially when you math it out, unless it's a total runaway from one of the 2 bowlers. Rob Brown will drop 6, leaving the 4 horsemen left side on lane 23. And that's a spare for Rob Brown, taking out the 4 horsemen left side perfectly, running them down. The 1, the 2, the 4, and the 7 pins all taken out just perfectly. That's an open 10 and 1 for Rob Brown. And start out the 5th game, the 5th and final game of this Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour Class B North match between Rob Brown and Eric Hallee Sr. Eric Hallee Sr. just barely eking out Rob Brown so far. That 1st game putting him over the edge. 5 points to 3 points so far. With 8 points decided, but 6 points still up in the air for this 5th and final game. Rob Brown for a 10 box with a 5 fill. That puts him at 25 after 2. Here's where we stand. Eric Hallee Sr. with a 4-game total of 407. Rob Brown looking for a strike. Will be a slow motion strike. It will be a slow motion strike. Final 9-pin falling slow, but as long as it fell, that's all that matters. That's a strike for Rob Brown. Open 35 in 3 plus 2 balls. We are off to the races, seeing a lot more marks after our bowlers took a little halftime break. Came back rejuvenated. Seemed to have agreed across one another, saying, hey, we should pull some marks and make this a little more exciting. And definitely has been working out for him. That's a 7 fill for the first ball for Rob Brown. And that's a spare. So it's a 10 fill, and it's another spare for an open 55-4 for Rob Brown. Rob Brown is off to the races now. Exciting first half here in the 5th. He was hungry for those 6 points. 4 for the total, 2 for the game. Rob Brown filling that spare with 7. He's in the 60s after 4. He's 62-4. This is going to be a bit more of a difficult spare, though. I don't know if he's going to have as easy of a time with this one, but we'll see what he can do. The placement of this wood may make all the difference. 3, 7, and 6 pins on the deck. And I think he played it about the best. I think you probably could have played it without going for the 3-6 pocket. So it's no spare. 8, 9, or 10. It's going to be a 9 box. That is a 71.5 for Rob Brown. 71 after 5. What a woof. What a run for Rob Brown here in the 5th. Making Eric Hallee sweat for that 6 points. This is a very valuable 5th game. 4 points for the total. 2 points for the game. Rob Brown putting up a very impressive showing with a 3-mark half. 1 strike, 2 spares, 71.5. Eric Hallee Sr. has his work cut out for him. He's going to have to come out swinging with an explosive first half to maintain pace with Rob Brown. Here at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. Eric Hallee Sr. even remarking to Rob Brown, that was some good bowling. Have to agree. Eric Hallee Sr. now coming up to bowl on lane 23. See what he can do to answer Rob Brown. Hallee Sr., lane 23, fires, opening ball. Off to the head pin to the right, pin still falling, the 1, the 4, the 8, and the 10 pins. Interesting leave. Piece of wood to the left of the 1 pin will probably be assistive here. See if he can get it. But he gets a spare. He doesn't play that wood, but I think that actually helps. That's a spare for Eric Hallee Sr. We are off to the races again with the spares, starting out the 5th game. Eric not taking Rob Brown's opening spare, sitting down. If he can get over a 5 fill, he will for sure stay on pace. Psychologically, that would have to feel good, too. Eric Hallee Sr. averaging 108.45 for the season. He fires. He's going to be on the head pin, and he's going to take, wow, an interesting 6 fill. I think he kind of deserved a little bit more than that in terms of the pinfall and this leave, but it is a 6 fill. It's going to be a difficult spare. 3, 7, 9, and 10 pins. That's a hard shot. And he misses the object pin. He takes out only the 9 pin. The 3, the 7, and the 10 pins are left on the deck with no wood to help him. No spare, just 7, 8, 9, or 10 box opportunity for Eric Hallee Sr. For the 10 box, he fires, and he misses everything for a 7 box. 23 after 2 versus 25 after 2. Eric Hallee Sr. versus Rob Brown, respectively. Exciting 5th game here in the first half. We're in the 5th and final game, but this is still exciting nonetheless from all angles, especially in terms of points. If you're just tuning in, stay tuned. Grab some ice cream or a drink or something. This is Eric Hallee Sr. versus Rob Brown. Eric Hallee Sr. bowling on lane 23, his first ball. Off the head pin to the right, leaving the 4 horsemen left side, plus the 9, the 10 pins with some favorable wood. That wood, particularly to the right of the head pin, is going to be helpful. Senior fires. That's a spare. That was precisely how I thought he was going to play it, and that's another mark for Senior. Staying on pace with Rob Brown. It's not a strike, but it is a spare. 33 open and 3 for Hallee Senior. Now, this was the point in the match where Rob Brown got a strike and then a spare on strike, and that was big for Rob Brown to get to 71-5. So let's see how Eric can respond to that. Eric on the head pin. That's a 7 drop. That's helpful. It's a 7 fill. It's 40 after 3. Compare that to 45 after 3 for Rob Brown. Not down by all that much. this will be a difficult spare. See if Eric can put a spin ball on it. There is a spin ball on it. The 6-pin just barely survives that. 6-pin left in the deck for a 9 or 10 box for Eric Hallee Sr. For the 10, Eric fires 10 box, 50 and 4. I said 50 and 4. With 1 to go, he's trailing Rob Brown 71.5. If he gets a 10 box, he'll get to 60. If he can get a mark, he'll have an open 60. I'm going to see how Eric Hallee Sr. can respond to Rob Brown's explosive 71.5 in the 5th game. Senior releases, and he nearly takes them all out. Has a great pocket shot. He's left with the 6 and the 9 pins on the deck with a piece of wood that I don't think is really advisable to hit, but we'll see how he hits it. That wood could be useful if you hit it light enough. If you hit it too hard, it's going to just sail directly behind those 2 pins. He's going to opt to skip the wood and just take the spare. That's an open 60.5 for Eric Hallee Sr. We have a game, folks. Eric Hallee Sr. not down that much. 60 potential 70.5 in the 5th if you can get a strike on that spare. Rob Brown with a close 71.5 in the 5th. We have a game, folks. This is a 6-point 5th game in this B North ACST match. Rob Brown starting out missing the head pin, but some wood coming back to help him out with an 8 drop. That's 2 and the 7 pins with some wood left on the deck for a spare opportunity. Something tells me he might get that. And he just barely misses it. He hit it correctly, but a little bit too full. The piece of wood didn't go back to the 7 pin far enough. That's a 10 box for Rob Brown. Good pinning. 81 after 6. He didn't throw any ball or make any impact incorrectly, if I had to make any judgment on that. Rob Brown sitting at 81 in 6 now. Lane 24 he releases off the head pin to the right once again. 1, 2, 8, and 10 pins on the deck with one piece of wood that isn't going to be incredibly helpful. It looks like it might actually be... Nope, it's still in play. Rob Brown for the spare, and wow, there was some interesting wood distribution in the back, but he's left with the 10 pin and the 10 pin only for a 9 or 10 box opportunity for potential 91 in 7. That is 91 in 7 for Rob Brown. Rob Brown with a very, very good 5th game here, which is more representative of his general average and his ability to get really explosive streaks of marks, as we saw at Lakeside Lanes. Riverwalk Lanes in Amesbury, Massachusetts very recently. Rob Brown not filling anything. He takes out the 3 and the 9 pins for right side half Worcester. And for a spare opportunity, we have some wood wrapping around, and he nearly picks up the spare with an interesting distribution of pins. Gotta say, that was quite an interesting roll of wood going on there, but that's a 10 box for Rob Brown. As I just adjust the camera here, that's his 3rd 10 box in a row for 101 and 8. I believe it's 101 and 8. Interesting. Okay. It looks like we have him scored at 9. All right, I will adjust my score to match what Compy score says up there. If anyone's watching this in the future and thinks that's off, just review that just to confirm. So 109 for Rob Brown. 108 for Rob Brown, excuse me. 1, the 2, and the 7 pins on lane 24 for Rob Brown. And it looks like he's going to take an 8 box for 108 and 9. 108 and 9 for Rob Brown. With 1 to go. Rob had a couple of interesting spare opportunities here, but they've been just kind of getting away from him from time to time here. In the second half in particular, but that's Candlepin for you. Sometimes you can have a really good first half, and the second half, suddenly you just wonder what happened. Speaking of wondering what happened, we were just waiting on the ball return. A little bit slow on lanes 23 and 24 here. Rob Brown direct on the head pin, 8 drop, 3 and the 6 pin are the only ones left standing for potential spare. For the spare, Rob Brown fires, and he misses it. He hits the 3 pin just a little bit too much to the left and leaves the 6 pin. And you'll take a 9 box for 117 for Rob Brown. So a markless second half, putting him at 117, coming off of that 71 half. Eric Hallee Sr. is at a 60 half after 5, plus a ball. It's an open 60 half in the 5th. Again, Eric Hallee Sr. stands with his work cut out for him. Here at the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour, Class B North. We have Eric Hallee Sr. here stepping up to play for the final half of the 5th game. Here at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. It's been a pleasure broadcasting this to you tonight. If you stay tuned to Candlepin Bowling Network, it might already even be in progress. The Friday Night Pro League is going on, in which we have some of the best bowlers in all of the Candlepin community squaring off against one another in teams matches, 5-on-5, 2 boxes at a time, for 3 games of Candlepin Bowling. Check that out on Candlepin Bowling Network. Eric Hallee Sr., I believe that was a 2 fill. I'm sorry, I'm yakking while he's filling a spare. I'll fix that if that's wrong, but I believe that was a 2 fill. Take out everything but 2 pins. That's a 10 box for Eric Hallee Sr., 72 and 6. I will confirm that once this compy score is updated, once Rob Brown updates that. And it was a 2 fill, confirmed, 72 after 6 for Eric Hallee Sr. 4 boxes to go in this match. Rob Brown has completed bowling for a 5-game total of 520. Eric Hallee Sr. is at 479 after 4.5 games, dropping 8 at the start of the 7th frame. He's got the goalposts. He's got the 4 and the 6 pins. Difficult spare for sure. He has to cap that wood in the right way, and he's going to try it, but no dice. He takes out the left side goalpost for only the 6 pin left for a 9 or 10 box opportunity for potential 82 and 7. Or 81 and 7. One of the two. Eric Hallee Sr. will take an 82 and 7 for a 10 box. 3 to go. He has to get to 117. This is an important match. He's down by 31 by this point. 31 for the match and 35 for the game lead. Needs marks. Hallee Sr. punches a little bit hard down the center. 5 drop, spread eagle minus the 2 pin. And he's going to have to go for probably the right side pocket, the 3-6 pocket, if he wants any hope of getting this. Sails through the void, and the void stares back. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10 box for Eric Hallee Sr. This might be critical now. He needs these pins to stay on pace. Ooh, and that's going to be a 5 box for Eric Hallee Sr. That may have decided a few things here. I don't want to say for certain, but unless he can get a streak of strikes, that might have handed the 6 pin total, the 6 point total, along with the game to Rob Brown. But we'll see. 87 and 8 for Eric Hallee Sr. He needs marks. 4 drop. 1, 3, 5, 6, 7. No, 1, 3, 5. 1, 3, 5, 6, 8, and 9 pins on the deck. For a spare, Eric Hallee. He needs this spare. Hits full. A noble attempt on it, but the 5 and the 8 pins remain on the deck on lane 24. And he's going to try to pin this out. He's going to take a 10 box for 97 in 9. He needs a double strike. Or a strike. He needs a strike and a spare to tie. Double strike to have any hope of passing Rob, I believe, if my math is correct. That's where we're at. But the strike will decide the 5th game. Fortunately, that's not a strike. That's a 7 drop, maybe an 8 drop. It is an 8 drop. So I believe That is going to be 6 points awarded to Rob Brown. Eric Hallee Sr. going for a spare. A spare will get him to 107, and a 10 fill on that spare will get him to 117. So he could potentially tie this. And that was it. He went for that spare, but put a little bit too much riz on that ball. Is that the right term? Riz? I don't know. Going for the 10 box. That's a 10 box. That's 107, and that will be it. That is a 5-game total of 514 for Eric Hallee Sr. with that 107 in the 5th. 117 game 5 for Rob Brown for a 5-game total of 520. So the total is awarded to Rob Brown along with the 5th game. 6 points to Rob Brown. And Rob Brown will be going home with 9 points. Eric Hallee Sr. will be going home with 5 points. Very interesting point distribution. So Rob Brown takes the match total as well as game 5 and game 3 and half of game 2. Eric Hallee Sr. took game 1, half of game 2, and game 4. So a really interesting 9-5 point distribution. There's your 9-5 for you on this Friday night. Rob Brown will go from 77 and 105 to 86 and 110. Eric Hallee Sr. will fall from 77 and 77 back down to a sub 1.0 win-loss ratio of 82 and 86 to make his division just that more competitive in general, more of a toss-up in his division. This will help Rob Brown for the wild card positioning for sure. Rob Brown tonight with 2 strikes, 6 spares, 21 tens with an average of 104, beating his average for the season. Perfect box percentage of 58.0. We have Eric Hallee Sr. with 2 strikes, 8 spares, 14 tens with an average of 102.8 for perfect box percentage of 48.0 for this very, very exciting match here at Lakeside Lanes. But that'll be about it for us today here in Manchester, New Hampshire. If you're new to the world of Candlepin bowling content, thanks for watching, and I hope this was a pleasant viewing experience for you. If you enjoyed what you saw and want to see more, I invite you to strike, comment, and subscribe to the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour page on Facebook, as well as Candlepin Bowling Network, Candlepin Bowling Network, Candlepin Corner, Alley Chat, and Bowling Nerd Network, where all kinds of other videos, streams, and productions are regularly posted in addition to results and statistics. If you are a returning bowler, it's great to have you along once again, and hope you enjoyed this program. And if you are into podcasts, there's also Candlepin shows such as The Approach and Ripping the Rack. So please check those out if you feel so inclined. Special thanks to our ACST League Commissioner, Danny Finn, our Next Gen Stats powered by Micah Imperato, Brian Hebert for statistical graphics used in this broadcast, the staff at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. I've been Steve Kelly along with Eric Hallee Sr. and Rob Brown, and I hope you have a fantastic evening, and we hope to see you over in the Friday Night Pro League stream. Have a great night, everybody.